all talking about, this is all about being a great presenter. What do I mean by a great presenter? Well, the thing about being a great presenter is that you're talking about prospecting. We're talking about listing presentation, buyer presentation. And I'm going to say it again, prospecting. It's so important to be yourself, to be the great presenter that you are. And it's honestly, I hate to use this word, but it's sales. It's not a matter of selling yourself. It's a matter of being who you are, sharing the knowledge that you have. What that's called is giving value, right? So we have speaker authority. As a speaker, as a presenter, as a prospector, you have to kind of prove yourself first. So in order to be able to do that, you've got to practice. You've got to understand what you're saying. You've got to memorize, but you don't want to memorize so that you're rattling off a script. You need to be consistent in that practice, consistent in the assimilation to who you are to get that message across. Take advantage of the opportunity that you have. A lot of people say that, I don't have any role play partners, or I need some help with this, or I need some help with that. Unfortunately, a lot of us really won't take the time to find a role play partner. So it's like you're like practicing on the real deal, right? And that's not a good thing, but unfortunately, you've got to take advantage of that opportunity. So that means the practice is so important, right? You got to take the opportunity to speak, and you need to be present at that time. You need to be there. You need to understand what you're talking about. How are you going to say it? See, it's not exactly what you say, but it's how you say what you say, right? So a lot of times we find ourselves as real estate agents talking an awful lot. You know what? We actually talk too much. So in this presentation that I'm doing for you now is I am the speaker. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm telling you, we're going to talk about being a speaker. We're going to talk about being a great presenter, right? So we're giving you some tips and tricks on how to do that, what's necessary as we move along. Like, for instance, to be that speaker in the situation we're talking about, rather than a speaker on stage, you want to be able to be that speaker on your own stage. That stage is on the phone as a prospector, in front of your client or prospective client as the buyer agent, the seller agent, or the investor agent that you are, right? You want to be the one that's asking the questions in those situations. When you're presenting on a client base, you want to ask questions and you want to talk as little as possible. You want to ask probing questions, self-discovery questions, so that the other person, that buyer, seller, investor, whatever they are, is listening and answering your questions, so you can take that question and move on to the next question. Understand that you never want to have that next question in your head. You can have an idea of what you're going to ask, but it's more important to listen than anything else. So we want to make sure that you do that, right? So when you do answer a question, always answer the question with authority. Never embellish your answer to extend what you're going to say. That's called bullshit, right? So understand, it's the old days when, excuse me, I remember when I was in college and I didn't have the answer to an essay question, but I knew I studied it. I just couldn't remember it. So I was like, how many pages am I going to write before I get to it? So it was like a big BS answer to get to it. But you can't do that when you're presenting, right? You need to get over the fear you're going to have with making that call, presenting to people, right? It's just like, okay, so I'm here presenting to everybody now. I know I'm live on my group in Facebook, but I'm not live anywhere else. So I'm talking to a maximum of about 1,200 people right now, right? So I have to think about who I'm talking to. And I'm talking to real estate agents, and I'm talking to top agents for the most part, right? So when you're talking to these people, it's easier for me to have my own persona. But I do understand that it may not be as easy for you to talk to that perfect stranger. Yeah, there are people on this page that are perfect strangers of mine, right? So I'm bringing my passion. I'm bringing everything I've got, and I'm talking from my heart. As you know, as you can see, the slides don't completely and totally reflect what I'm saying, but I'm making the point of what it is, right? I'm bringing who I am, right? What and who is my alter ego? What is that? That's Dave Finale, the guy that likes to talk to people, that wants to help people. Let's go to another example. Let's look at Hoss Pratt. If you don't know who Hoss Pratt is, look him up. It's HOSSPRATT. Hoss Pratt is probably one of the best listing agents in the country, or was, right? He has a book called The Listing Boss. And what he talks about is his alter ego, which is Boss Hoss. He put a golf glove on his left hand as he made calls. I'm not sure how that did it, but he always say that that was his alter ego, Boss Hoss, so he can make those phone calls, right? So one of the things he also does when he speaks on stage, he unzips his outer layer and goes into Boss Hoss mode, and he sees that Boss Hoss layer on the side, knowing that that's the other person, the shy person he left outside. And he's going to speak from his heart. He's going to speak from his passion. Some of us, honestly, have been doing this for a long time. You really need to repassionize what you're doing. So we want you to show your passion. We want you to connect with your audience. Your audience might be one person, two people, maybe three or four, but you've got to connect with them in such a way where you're building rapport. Those are questions, those are answers, but it's not always in the book what you're going to ask them to get information. You know, you want to be to a point where you know almost everything about them when they're signing on the dotted line. Ask them about, you know, what their wants, desires, and needs are, right? You want to focus on them. And as you ask those questions and get involved with that situation, you're going to really know who you're talking to and what you can actually do for them. You're actually going to assimilate their desires and needs into your head and heart to come out with more as you talk to them. You know what? You want to keep it simple because you want to see if you can gel together. You want to see if it makes sense for you to work together. And that's a line you can use, not a line, but as part of a script you can use. You're talking to Uncle Joe. What does that mean? It means that you're talking to someone that you care about. You need to also have that persona that you're talking to Uncle Joe. That could be your alter ego. Who's Uncle Joe? Uncle Joe is your trusted uncle. That if he came to you and said, Dave, I need to sell my house. What should I do? Or Dave, I'm going to go for sale by owner. I know you're a real estate agent. What should I do? How should I do it? And that's the conversation you have. You talk to them like Uncle Joe. Hey, you know, Uncle Joe, you know, how long is it going to be before you hire a professional to, you know, to sell your home? Okay. You're going to wait a couple of weeks to see how it goes on your own because you think you can do it yourself. I get that 100%. And as you're talking to Uncle Joe, if they're on the other side of the phone, you're smiling whether they can see you or not, right? You need to stay on point. You need to stay on task. With Uncle Joe, you're going to be repassionized. You're going to be so passionate in what you're saying because you really love Uncle Joe and you want to make sure that Uncle Joe understands what you're saying and what you're doing, right? You're going to tell Joe stories about different things that have happened with your experiences. You want to use your voice effectively, your body language as well, and you want to make sure that you breathe. It's important to breathe, even if you're going with passion and you're having a great back and forth, because you know what? If you're talking like this, like I am, I'm talking to an audience, right? I'm not talking to an audience like one person or two people. I'm talking to thousands of people right now, right? So it's a little different for this conversation because if I slowed down and wasn't talking like me, someone might think I had a stroke or something. But the point I make is this. You want to mirror and match what Uncle Joe is saying, how Uncle Joe is feeling. If he wants to give you crap and he doesn't want to trust real estate agents, you know what? Depending on your relationship, you might want to give it back to him. But this is what you're going to do with everybody you talk to. You're going to have an audience that needs to hear what you say. You just have to figure out how you're going to do it so they can not only match their passion for what they have to do, match their attitude, but you need to show it with passion from yourself. What's the conversation about? Is it difficult? We all have difficulties when it comes to prospect speaking. Notice I didn't say public speaking. It's prospect speaking. We need to adjust our lives, and that's where the boss Haas alter ego point comes in as well, right? What's the conversation about? What are you going to say? How are you going to handle that all knowing and ever powerful objection, right? You need to redirect the conversation with another great question. It's not about handling anything. It's about controlling your conversation. You want to control the conversation to a point where you're going to not only ask the questions to find out what their objections truly are, is that you're going to control the conversation where ultimately you're going to control the transaction, your business, and your life. I mean, take the whole thing together. The conversation is about life. At your point in time, it's right there. It's right there about your business, about building rapport with people that are also going to have a lifetime value. That's not something everybody talks about, but what is the lifetime value of a client? Well, if you do this great job, it could be a lot of money simply because they could be referring you lots of business. So you need to look beyond the ending of this transaction or the closing of this transaction, because really that's where it starts. Humor. It's something you need to inject from time to time, or maybe you don't, or maybe you don't like to be funny. But be aware of the facts as you're throwing in humor. The placement of that humor is important, and placement of humor could be really critical. There could be tension. There could be stress built up as you're talking on the other side of the buyer or the seller. Maybe the buyer's tight with funds and needs a house when they know that they're tight in the market and need to get something. Maybe the seller keeps telling you that I need to get this out of the house. I need to get this out of the house, or I can't sell. You need to take that into thought process if you're thinking about trying to say something funny. But I will tell you that humor will always help make light of a situation or take some pressure off and relieve some stress, right? Probably, the only place I say don't take any chances is if you are unaware of what's going on. You're unaware of what engagement that's going to happen. If you don't know enough about what you're going to say as a joke, never use it. If you don't know for sure that it's going to be funny to them or it's going to relieve some stress, don't use it. Be extremely careful with it. We're going to ask tough questions. It's never easy to do this. It's never easy to travel down that road of tough questions, but you've got to take chances as far as, first of all, you want to make sure that you really don't know a heck of a lot about everything that you're working on, right? You don't need to know the kind of, if you're prospecting and you're calling for sale by owners, you're calling expireds, you don't need to know everything about that house, right? The tough questions have to do with getting the appointment to see if it makes sense to work together, right? You're never going to be controversial. You want to be thought-provoking. Think about that line, right? It's all about asking the tough questions because they're questions that some people won't ask. What's the real reason you're selling? And they start going ham and hawing about money and everything else. And I need to get this out of this. Well, let me ask you a question. Are you in danger with your mortgage? That's a tough question to ask because honestly, they might talk to a financial advisor about that, but they might not want to talk to you. So you have to understand sometimes, except for some things like that, you want to be ready to go with a thought-provoking enough question when they're talking about how they might say agents suck, or, they're all this or all that, right? Or they're talking about the thing that they're doing to promote their home that just doesn't make sense. So you can ask, hey, is it okay if I piss you off? Because no one's going to say that. You want to throw a wrench into the typical conversation. It's a table turner. It's going to switch everything around. If they scream at you, maybe you scream a little back. Those are tough questions. Those are tough things to do. You got to grow a pair sometimes in these conversations when you're presenting. And remember, prospecting is presenting, right? You always are going to go with the end in mind. Of course, it's about you making and helping people with what their desire is. It's always about help, okay? What will help them, right? Not what do they need. I mean, they're always going to tell you what they need, and it really doesn't have a lot to do with what they want. What you have to address, though, with what they want rather than what they need. Your presentation is all about them, the end in mind, you, the end in mind. What's it going to take to get this transaction completed? Remember, you're a product that your buyer, seller, investors, whoever are consuming. If you're talking on stage, the audience is your consumer. The end comes with a lot of things, but never worry, it's going to happen. Persistence, consistency, and showing up, right? The end is not about money, although that's where it's going to come in. Understand that, again, if you start with the end in mind of where you want to get, it's like business planning. It's like goal setting. You know what that goal is, and you're starting your week 12 months early, 10 months early, a quarter, 3 months early, with knowing where you need to be at the end of that quarter, at the end of that month, at the end of that year, at the end of that day. I know on my live at fives, I need to be at this point at this time of day. So the end in mind is finishing my presentation. Preparation is so important. And you want to go there and tell them, look, I practiced for this presentation. I prepared for this presentation. Now I'm performing this presentation for you. Be the Boy Scout. What does that mean? Know what you're going to say. Understand what you're going to say. Memorize it. Throw it out. Assimilate it into your own dialogue. You're talking to Uncle Joe, Aunt Mary, Cousin Susie, whoever it might be. Scripts is what to say. Dialogues is how to say what to say. You need to structure time to be great, or think about this. Do you want to be good? Do you want to be better? Or do you want to be best? Think about that one. It's important to understand what you're going to say, right? It's important to be prepared. It's important to ask the tough questions, right? It's important to show passion in what you're saying and connect with the person you're saying, right? It's important to stay on point and on task. And you need to use your voice and your body language effectively, right? When we say talk about everything, we say make sure you're prepared. Do you want to be good, better, or best? Actually, good is good enough. Now, you're probably saying that's kind of strange, Dave. Why would you say good is good enough? Good is good enough really for a simple reason. Because if you're looking to be the best at everything, you'll never make those prospecting calls. You'll never do this. You'll never do that. You'll always be ready to be ready. You're getting ready to get ready. And then you'll be comparing yourself to others. That's another sickness that we have as real estate agents, comparisitis. Let's not do that. Let's worry about being good and go get it. Because as time goes on, you will be the best. Now, a lot of these things I talked about have a lot to do with structure of your business. It has a lot to do with being prepared and getting ready and understand what you're saying in the end in mind. The most important thing you have to understand is that you need a structure to set all this up. So understand that to be good, you need to practice. To be good, you need to assimilate and internalize what we're going to say and how you're going to say it. That does not mean if you're making a speech, you absolutely positively need to memorize it. Because there are such things as prompting services. There's such thing as prompters. There's such thing as bullet points, as you see. Now, my presentation style for you is I have bullet points to work off of. I go into a slide and I see what's there. I do not read off of notes, and you don't need any notes either, because you're going to know what you want to say, because it's all about the house. It's all about the home. It's all about the investment that your investor wants, because you're going to understand what they want prior to getting to the presentation by the questions you presented. So there's another presentation. So it's multiple presentations. I'd love to have a conversation with anybody and everybody about everything I talked about and how we can look at some skills that you might want to improve or enhance, right? So that's one of the things I do with Real Estate Skill Builder and all the coaching we do is we talk about the things, how we can enhance your business, how we can help grow your business, because that's what coaching is. Yes, we do training as well. That's teaching the skills. Upskilling is the bridge between training and coaching. As we upskill, we get to the coaching of doing better with what you have to work with. And it's all the skills, and that's the presenting. So be a great presenter. Know what you're going to say. Know how you're going to say it. Remember, it's not what you say, it's how you say what you say. And go out there and get it. Be like Boss Haas. Have that other alter ego if you need it. Talk to Dave.work. That's a place you can go and have a conversation with me to see how I might be able to help you build your business a little better.